Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eliminate the Impact of Planned Downtime on Your IBM. Today's webinar is sponsored by Precisely and is produced by Actual Tech Media. Glad to see everyone today. My name is Keith Ward. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. But before we get to today's content, there are a few housekeeping things I need to go over that'll help you get the most out of this session. First, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Let us know where you're logging in from today. And we have got people from all over the place: Wisconsin, Raleigh, North Carolina, Maryland, Mississippi, just from all places. So great to have you here. Now, that Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be experiencing. First thing you want to do if you've got any problems is a browser refresh, which will fix most audio, video, slide advancement problems. If that doesn't work, let us know, and we will get right on it and help you out. All right, next to that questions tab is the handouts tab. And you're going to want to go there because there are numerous important resources that you can download, including a link to getting started with Precisely, our sponsor today. Now, in the handout section, you'll also find a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, where you can get access to our huge library of printed resources on a wide array of technology topics. In the handout section, you'll also find a link to our ATM Events Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. We have got some great stuff coming up. So I would encourage you to check those out and sign up for some upcoming webinars that are going to be right up your alley. Finally, we have got a prize we're giving away today, $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Now, you do have to be in attendance for the entire event to qualify for the prize. If you're interested in the official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing, you can find those in the handouts section as well. All right, enough of that. Now it is time to get to the main event here. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters from Precisely. They are Lee Walke, the Director of Professional Services, and Dan Sims, the Product Management Director. Dan has got the mic and is ready to go. So Dan, take it away.
Thanks very much. And thanks everybody for joining us today for our conversation about eliminating the impact of planned downtime on your IBM. And I'm happy to be joined today by Lee Walke, who's a key member of our professional services team. Been doing this for a long time. He's really up to date on these issues. And also with Dan Sims from the product management team, who is responsible for all of our IBM HA products. So with this illustrious crew here, we'll go ahead and dive in and get started. The first slide here is just kind of telling you what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact of downtime, and then I'm going to hand it over to Lee and Dan to cover these different areas where we can really impact the planned downtime you need to go through, but we can help you get around the actual pain you have about having your systems down. And then we should have some time at the end for Q&A. So when we look at the impact of downtime, we've all kind of been in this world for a long time and know that there's planned downtime and unplanned downtime, and they both are painful, but they're different. And when we talk about planned downtime, what we're really specifically focused on in our conversation today are those times when you need to take the system down or make parts of it unavailable because you're doing maintenance. Maybe it's an upgrade, maybe it's a physical hardware change you need to make, maybe you need to change some configurations. Whatever the reason is, you're going to need to plan some downtime and take the system offline or take users offline. Unplanned downtime, conversely, is those times when you've got downtime you weren't expecting. Generally we talk about these things as, natural disasters. They don't happen nearly as frequently as planned downtime, but when they do, they can be pretty significant and frankly pretty expensive. But in either case, downtime costs you money. There's cost to the business when you have downtime, and it is expensive. One thing that we always like to point out is you can try to avoid the planned downtime, delay things. Maybe we'll do this later, or maybe I'll put it off to some point in the future. And it does in the short term keep you from experiencing the downtime. But what you do is create an ever-increasing risk of unplanned downtime because you haven't done the maintenance that your system really requires. So, that's not a really good solution to eliminating your planned downtime, which is just, put it off and sort of stick your head in the sand on it. When you start to look at the actual hard costs, though, and this data comes from a number of different sources. You can see there at the bottom, but downtime per minute for small business can be about $500. That's per minute. But for large businesses, you're into thousands of dollars. An unplanned downtime actually ends up being more expensive than planned downtime, even though the systems are both down. Generally, the problem with the unplanned downtime is that you're scrambling to understand what's going on. You're trying to get the right people involved. There's all those kind of elements that make unplanned downtime a little bit more chaotic and a little bit harder to deal with, and ultimately can cost you more per minute because of those kind of issues. But in any case, the revenue impact or the cost from an unplanned outage for a lot of large companies, particularly companies that are maybe doing online ordering things, can be pretty expensive. $500,000 per hour for a very large enterprise. So this is not an small amount of expense that we're potentially dealing with here. So it's something that really demands your attention. When we talk to companies and ask them about which of the following costs really do they feel like they incur with downtime, whether it's planned or unplanned, lost revenue is the number one answer. That's honestly the place where most people's heads go. If my systems are down, I'm not generating revenue. But some other areas that jump out in the survey was 47% are considering lost productivity. Not only are my customers unable to interact with me, i.e. lost revenue, my employees are sitting there really with nothing to do. They can't do their job. So there's a productivity hit for all the time the systems are down, that you're actually paying for that labor, but you're not actually getting any benefits out of it. And then the other element here is lost brand equity or trust. And this gets into something I want to talk about really on the next slide, which is all these different areas that your downtime can potentially impact. And it's not all just the hard costs of lost revenue and lost productivity, but there are a lot of other things to consider. When you're trying to calculate your own cost of downtime and understand what it is, as we go on kind of left to right on this thing, damaged reputation. Your customers are going to be frustrated if they can't get to your systems, or maybe you're a bank and your customers can't check their balances or can't do transfers, things like that. So you've got a tangible negative impact to your reputation, in the industry if you've got downtime and it happens frequently. We mentioned productivity, and you can calculate that based on how many hours your systems are down, based on how much your employees cost. Other expenses that people don't think of a lot of times when you're dealing with downtime, particularly unplanned downtime, you end up having to spend some money on things maybe like temporary employees to do some data input after the fact to kind of clean things up. You may have to temporarily get different equipment while something gets repaired. Overtime costs for your existing customers, shipping those things around, just all kinds of different potential expenses that downtime can generate. And generally here, these fall when you're talking about unplanned downtime, but they can be impactful on planned downtime as well. We spoke in the prior slide about revenue loss, and there's the obvious, I don't generate the revenue while my systems are down. That kind of shows the direct loss. But when you start to think about some other areas, if you're out of compliance with an industry standard, you could have penalties that you have to pay. You could suffer the penalty, and this gets back to the damaged reputation. In a lot of cases for companies, if your systems are down, you've got a competitor system is up, you're going to lose revenue that day for that, and you're kind of accounting that for the direct loss thing. But what about the next time that customer orders? Are they less likely to engage with your site or your company because they've had a negative experience because of the downtime? And just being able to, be the company that is constantly up and be reliable, that's something that's important to your reputation. and having to offset that with the revenue issues here can be significant. And then finally, financial performance. We talked about direct revenue loss. That's obviously, going to impact your financial performance in terms of your revenue, but you can have other kind of, lower level impacts like cash flow problems, discounts that you could lose. Your stock price could be hit if you've got a very visible sort of downtime event that, gets picked up in the trades or in the press, and you can experience, people, valuing stock based on those kind of things, particularly if it's a recurring problem. So my point on this slide is really to understand that you can calculate your specific cost of downtime, but the greater point for today's conversation really is knowing that this is this painful, knowing that it's potentially going to cost me a lot of money. What can I do to eliminate the downtime that I have to experience to do the normal kind of things that I have to do in terms of maintenance and system upgrades and things like that? And that's where Lee and Dan are going to step in now and talk you through some different scenarios where we can help, and our products being used in a certain way can help you avoid those planned downtime events and save you all these costs. So with that, Lee, I'm going to turn it over to you for the first of our topics, backup while active.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody in attendance. Appreciate you joining us here today. Backups are an interesting topic, right? You think about it, it's something we've been conditioned over time to just accept. It's a part of doing business. It's a part of our operations. One thing that over the course of time is the negotiating from IT to the business is, well, how long can we be down? And that seems to be for some businesses, that seems to be a critical focus, is trying to negotiate this back and forth. Okay, maybe it started out as a weekly maintenance window to take your all-important backups. Backups are absolutely critical to an environment. We all agree with that. But then maybe the business comes back and says, we can't tolerate a one-day or once-a-week outage. We got to move it to once every 2 weeks, once every month. And you start looking at it in terms of that, and all of a sudden you start peeling the onion back a little bit, and you say, well, what is that really costing us in terms of risk by not doing the backups, by not doing maintenance? And as Bill alluded to, a lot of times when people get into this market space, they've got their blinders on and they're thinking about disaster recovery. They don't focus on really what Bill talked about, and I think pointed out very well, is the fact that planned outages are as important, if not more critical, to eliminate in an infrastructure as unplanned downtime. So when we talk about planned downtime, really the backups are really the number one thing. And as I said, we've become conditioned to accept it. And with the backup downtime, you end up increasing it depending on your situation. The larger the system, the longer it takes, right? And you might run into some critical issues such as locked objects. You might run into some situations where you can't really do a save because of open commits and things. Applications are at risk by not doing your routine maintenance. So backup downtime is extremely important. And what we feel is we have the best solution and have had for many years in addressing something that at its core seems very simplistic, and that's utilizing logical replication for target side backups. So that allows you to keep your production machine up and running, and instead of taking it down for backups on a weekly, a monthly, or quarterly basis and introducing risk into your enterprise, you establish replication to a dedicated LPAR, replicate in real time. So as you're updating files and transactions are occurring on your production partition, you are replicating those in real time to a backup, and that's where you offload, if you will, the backups to that system, thus saving your data in a way that you can do it as often as you need to, whether it's daily, incremental, full, weekly, monthly, whatever is required in your enterprise, while leaving your production system up and running, again, making money for your business, not worrying about, gee, are the customers going to access this, or are we going to be able to build systems today? What does that mean in terms of our business? And again, getting out of the mindset of just a conditioned response that it's what I would call a necessary evil that you can address by target side backups. So again, leave your production system up and running, replicate data in real time to another partition, whether that be local in your data center, whether that be remote into a separate data center geographically dispersed, or even the cloud infrastructure where you don't know where it is. You just know that it's out there somewhere, and you're replicating data to it, and it's being handled by a cloud provider. It doesn't matter the infrastructure for our solutions. It doesn't matter whether it's local, remote. All we care about is where do we send the data to, and where are you going to take your backups from? That's the important part. So we are agnostic as far as storage, as far as location. As long as we can replicate the data to a target, you can utilize that target for the very important and necessary target side backups. One thing we have done here at Precisely with our Mimics product line and logical replication is it doesn't have to be an either or. What we bring to the table is a cooperative capability with other technologies to basically make it advantageous for you, the customer, right? So we don't sit here and say, we're going to, it's got to be Mimics or it has to be a hardware solution such as Flash Copy. We bring the two solutions together, and we feel that we fill some of the holes that are available with the hardware solution of Flash Copy with our logical replication solution in Mimics. So what does that mean with the basics? That means your production system is protected, for example, by Mimics. You replicate the data, and the Flash Copy is done on a backup server without impacting the production server. Now, if you are very familiar with the architecture of the system, you realize that the one thing that separates the IBM I from any other platform out there is a single level storage, right? And there are some challenges, very advantageous, but there are some challenges when you're talking about things in operations such as backups, right? So how do we address that in conjunction with Flash Copy if you've already invested in this technology? What you do is you perform a flash with no pause to your production system of any kind, right? What you do is we have Mimics, as I mentioned, logical replication with Mimics running. You end your applied jobs. Meanwhile, the plumbing for logical replication, IBM's remote journaling, is active, and that's very important because it preserves your recovery point objectives and the integrity of the transaction. So you would fully end Mimics on the target, but you would leave the logical partition up and running, right? That's one way. Shut down the LPAR, bring it to a restricted state. The bottom line is Mimics with Flash Copy provides the least destructive solution for these types of operations. To put it pictorially on the right, you're going to see that it's safe and it's a true solution that combines great technologies to give you, the customer, a very advantageous solution. So number one, replicate from the production LPAR to the backup LPAR in real time, as I've mentioned. Number two, you take the backup server's Flash LPAR offline. Number three, you flash the backup data to the Flash Flash disk. And then you can IPL and access that data, or you can snapshot that LPAR, perform the save to tape. It seems so simple, but a lot of people don't think of it in terms of this way of how can I address my planned downtime, my number one planned downtime, which is my backups, most critical to my infrastructure. How can I address that, again, to give maximum uptime to my infrastructure? And we feel that Mimics with Flash Copy provides you great options, great backups, and without production server impact. So now we'll move into another type of planned outage, which is migrations. Migrations, as you go through time, are obviously critical to your infrastructure. You have to upgrade hardware. Anytime you do that, what does that introduce to you? That introduces downtime. What we feel we bring to the table and have for years, and many, many customers, even those without our product in place for high availability, disaster recovery, addressing planned and unplanned downtimes, they will utilize logical replication to migrate systems to eliminate that downtime. Now, anybody who's been in this marketplace knows with the System I that traditionally, how do you migrate systems? Traditionally, with no logical replication, you would plan for it, and at the planned event time, you would say, okay, I'm going to kick all my users off the system. That's what I'm going to do. So that starts the downtime clock right there, right? Now, traditionally, I'm going to do a save of that data. I have to ship the tapes somewhere, bring them to the target location, whether that's the data center tape library, whether that's a different data center geographically dispersed. If it's long distances, now you're talking about shipping tapes potentially overnight. If you're crossing the pond, for example, think about that downtime, right? And trying to piece all this together. So traditionally, we've lived with that in the System I infrastructure space. What logical replication can do is step in and say, you know what, that planned downtime from the time you kick your users off to the time you do the save, to the time you do the restore, to the time you do the test, to the time you connect your users to that backup system, that beginning to end process is all downtime to your business. At one point in time in my career, I worked for IBM, and we managed the IBM manufacturing environment. And if we wanted to take the systems down for a migration, for example, to bring in new hardware, that was a minimum, and I say minimum, of 48 hours of outage. That was 48 hours that IBM was not shipping and manufacturing any boxes anywhere in the world. Think about that. Think about that financial cost. But again, that was accepted at one point in time in the IBM IT world. So now what we do with logical replication is your production system remains active. We set up logical replication to what is going to be your new hardware platform, and we replicate it in real time. Those systems are now running in parallel. All this can be done while your production system is up and running. Now think about that timeline that I presented to you, from the time the save happens, shipping the tapes, restoring, and now you got to do some testing. What happens if that testing uncovers a problem? What if you have a hardware problem? What if there's a tape drive issue and you can't restore? Now you're into your backup plan, and that could even extend the outage even longer. So with logical replication, all of that is handled in daytime activity. So we set up logical replication to the new hardware, and now your testing can happen on a Monday, on a Tuesday. It doesn't have to happen at the actual cutover window, and you can do multiple tests. You can bring in application people. You can do hardware testing, acceptance testing. You can do multiple cutover attempts to make sure you got everything down, to document everything. Again, everything's running in parallel, and you can test it before ever even contemplating the switch, right? Users are continuing, your business is not interrupted, and it's very minimal time of cutover. Think about that window I said, from the time of the restore to the save, to the time of the restore and check out and bringing new users back online, right? Now, with migrate while active, that takes that downtime to just the time to switch your users from your old production system to your new production system, whether that's switching IP addresses or however your communication works, letting users access the system, getting that system connected to other systems that it interfaces with. That's your downtime right there. That's it. So the save happens, the restore happens, the testing happens, all offline, right? And you're not into a 48-hour outage that could potentially harm your business. As I mentioned before, with backups, we are agnostic. We can do anything. We can go from anywhere to anywhere is what I like to tell our customers or potential customers. We can go from any hardware to any hardware, right? Whether it's physical, whether it's virtual, whether it's cloud, a combination thereof. Doesn't even have to be just one-to-one. It can be one-to-many. There's so much flexibility because not every infrastructure is the same, right? And it covers everything that you would need, your data, your application, your critical objects. And again, talking about the near zero downtime and the from anywhere to anywhere, and we're agnostic as far as storage goes, et cetera. And then the other nice thing is you can even implement upgrading operating system levels as part of this. So as you go from one piece of hardware to another piece of hardware, you can bring in a new OS level. And again, you can test that out in parallel while your production business is up and running, and test that out so that at cutover, you're really minimizing your risk, which is really what it's all about. It's about eliminating downtime and managing your risk. So again, how does it work in summary? We replicate in real time from the old prediction system to your new production system. We run the audits as part of this process to ensure your data integrity is fine. And we do that right before the cutover runs, which is our recommendation, multiple times actually with the audits to ensure your data integrity is there, right? We are here to help you assist with that, right? Migrations is what we do. Over the course of time, this is where our niche has become, because let's face it, there's not a lot of new customers getting into high availability disaster recovery. There are some, but the majority of them who wanted to invest have already invested, okay? So what we've done over time is we've evolved, and we said, we've started addressing these downtimes, right? Number one downtime, most critical downtime, backups, migrations. So we are the migration experts. We can plan it with you. We do the software installation and configuration. We help you establish the sync point, help you validate the data on the new system. We're there to handhold you through the switch to the new system, which is your migration event, and coordinate your SaaS to basically get you across the finish line so that you are successful and you don't have the proverbial quote unquote egg on your face with a backup, having to execute a backup plan. The testing of the LPAR, like I said, security, data integrity, application, user acceptance, all that can be done leading up to the migration event and not necessarily as part of the migration event. Minimizing downtime, eliminating risk, supporting the infrastructure choice that you have because we are agnostic as far as any of the hardware goes, operating system levels, storage, etc. So I know that was quick and a lot of information, so feel free, if there are questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will address them, whether it's be now during this webinar or follow-on conversations. So right now I would like to turn it over to Dan Sims, who will talk about more while active technologies, starting with our Encrypt while active. Dan, it's all up to you now.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lee. And those two solutions, backup while active, migrate while active, we've been doing those, as you said, for a long time, and customers have gotten a lot of value out of those two solutions. So now what I'm going to do now is talk to you about a couple of things that are maybe a little less common, but certainly one of them we believe is going to be emerge more and more as we go. I'm Dan Sims, the product manager for IBM HA here at Precisely. The Sure Mimics product is under my portfolio, and we have other products too, Quick EDD, Itera, and they can do some of these things as well. Today's discussion will be around solutions. So let's go ahead and talk encrypt while active. So I'll be right up front with you. I am not the encryption guy or the security guy. I'm the HA guy. What I think about every day is managing risk and downtime, just in line with what Lee was just talking about. How do we help users avoid that downtime? But I'm sure that you and I both need to be thinking about securing our data, and encryption is a technology that is widely used and becoming more and more required. People are thinking more about it. And so we at Precisely have solutions for encryption of data at rest. So what I'm going to talk to you today, though, is some of the things that you can run into when you try to do encryption projects. So the thing of it is when you do encryption at rest, in order to get to the encryption, you have to basically take an outage to encrypt every field within that file. Now, if you have a small file, no big deal. But if you have a large file, a busy file, now you got something you have to grapple with, and here comes that planned downtime. So some of the things that you run into, of course, is exclusive locks. So that's an easy one. Everybody can understand that. When you start an encryption project, you take an exclusive lock and you start the process, and it starts at the top of the file and goes to the bottom, and you can't do anything with that file until you're done. So you might have a small window to do that, which is clearly a problem, but you also are changing every record within that file. So there's some application risk that you need to be thinking about as well with this. So we're going to talk about a solution, encrypt while active, that might be able to help us with that. Okay, so introducing encrypt while active, which combines our market-leading Assure technology. The way it works is you create a pre-production copy of your encrypted data. You would then promote that file to production with only a few minutes of downtime. So it's just how long it takes to move that file, the old file out and the new file in. And what you can even do, and I'm going to talk more about this later, is you can compress out deleted records if you want. which that should be very helpful as well if you're dealing with high numbers of deleted records. So this does combine our technologies from our Assure Mimics, Assure Security product portfolios, and then of course it does take some technique. It does take an approach and know how to do this. So we would combine our software with professional services, bring in the experts to plan this out, and so that you can be successful and have a smooth cutover. It really makes a difference. So let's get into some more details of how this actually works. So there's a lot on this chart. I will do my best to not lose you. But let's say here on the left, we have the production database running, servicing the business, okay? And what you are being asked to do is to encrypt the data at rest on some files within that production database application. So the approach that we would take is that we would set up those files in a temporary library. Okay, so you do have to understand which files you want to encrypt. Of course, that is a discussion of its own. So assuming you know that, you have those files figured out, you have the encryption definitions all set up, and if you speak to the security encryption experts, they're going to explain to you how this works, that it uses the field proc provided by the OS. And so that's all set up in the temporary library, but there's no data there. So you're humming along in production. You got your new encrypted files in the temporary library. They are empty. So then what we're going to do is we're going to do a copy active file from the production to the temporary library. And that's a record by record copy. It's going to populate the encrypted file simply by writing the record. And it calls that field proc, which encrypts the record per your specifications. Okay, so you just go ahead and you run that. And I like to say 0 to 100%. And when you get 100% copied, then it goes into idle mode. And so now you are keeping the files logically in sync with each other between production and temp file, and you just keep running like that indefinitely. And then you go ahead and you schedule a cutover. But before we talk cutover, we always want to make sure that we're doing encryption now, but we also need to maintain our switch readiness, right? So you can see on the slide here that we have an arrow going from left to right for replication. So we have a target system out there that's protecting the business from any kind of unplanned hardware or some other disaster that may come along. So we can't lose sight of that within our encryption project. So we want to make sure that that temporary file is replicated as well and protected. So that way, when we cut over that encrypted file, it is switch ready, just like any other file. We don't want to say, oh, we've cut over to the encrypted file, but now we need to resync it, and that's going to take days or hours, whatever. We would want to avoid that with this plan. So that's why we replicate it right away. Now you see on the upper left, there's an archive library. So far, we haven't done anything with that archive library. And so let's go ahead and flip the slide and see what happens. So now it comes time, and I apologize for all the words there, but just bear with me here. It comes time for cutover. So your encrypted files are all at the ready in the temp file. Maybe you schedule this on a Saturday morning or something like that. Maybe take an hour, a couple hours of downtime. And what you would do then is have a script that you would simply move the files, the affected files out of production into the archive. And then you would move the temporary files, which are encrypted, into the production library. And those are move operations, and they simply change the pointer of the files. And so the same thing happens on your target system. So essentially, you are instantaneously switch ready. Your files are all in sync. They've moved from one library to another, and now you have the encrypted files running in the production library. So now you're done. That's the end of the process, and you now are running on encryption at rest. Your data is encrypted at rest. So, of course, just to sum this up, what do you get out of this? Well, encrypt while active will minimize that downtime for encryption operations, which can be significant. It mitigates the risk of application failure after encryption, right? Remember, we stay switch ready at all times. So, and then I mentioned with this package, you can actually compress deleted records. You get that without even trying. So if you've got 50% deleted record, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, you can compress those out while you're doing the encrypt while active. So let's go right into now the compression while active. So you're getting the theme here, right? Backup while active, migrate while active, encrypt while active, trying to keep you up and running with minimal downtime is the name of our game. So compression while active. So this one is a little bit less common, I would say. I mean, a lot of people are doing reorgs and things like that, so that's not unusual. But it starts out with understanding that in a DB2 file, physical file or table, whatever you want to call it, when you delete a record, it does not free up the storage space, and it just marks it as deleted. Now, hopefully you are in your application using reuse deleted records. That is going to help minimize this problem. But no matter what, even if you are minimizing deleted records or reusing deleted records, you will get a deleted record when you delete one. And now, yes, if you insert one, it'll use that deleted record space. So that's how it minimizes it. But if you're, let's say, purging files, you'll still end up with a whole bunch of deleted records there until you come in with some inserts to replace them. So occasionally you might have to do some reorgs. But if you are not reusing deleted records, you could end up with a whole lot of wasted storage space. And that is just really, it's really just dead weight, nothing more. It's good for nothing, right? It causes your applications to run slower. It costs you money in storage, harder to deal with, just really not good. Okay, deleted record space, not good. So you want to get rid of that. And of course, there's tools out there. You probably know about Reorganize PFM from IBM, and it has a restart. Yes, those are good tools. Okay, good tools. Where we get called, though, is when the file is just too big. Those tools fall down, or maybe there's complexities like triggers or referential integrity constraints, and you can't get it done. Okay, you tell your manager you can't get it done with those tools, but you still have that big file and all that deleted record space and all that dead weight out there. That's not going away. So that's when we get the call. So what we're trying to do here is help you eliminate that wasted space, do planning and testing prior to make sure it's going to work. And then you should be able to, just like the encrypt while active and the migrate while active, you can take a short outage and cut over to the new file. So let's dig in here a little bit. Compression while active is an option for the most difficult files when traditional deleted record compression will not work. Copying the active records of a production file to a temp file and promoting the temp file to production at a convenient time. That's how it works. And don't forget to include the compressed files and replication, just like we talked about with the encrypt while active. So the concept's the same. You got your production system with a whole bunch of deleted records there, and we're going to copy that record by record, except without the deleted records, to the temporary library. And then we will protect both of those files, you know, along the way, because we don't want to have any kind of switch readiness issue. So set up the copy, do the compression, and then promote. So once it's cutover day, you go ahead and schedule a short outage. You move the production file into the archive library. You move the compressed file into the production library, and then you go live with it. And so just to review the benefits one more time, we can compress out those deleted records with near zero downtime. Switch readiness can be, should be, maintained throughout the process, and activities can be performed during normal business hours without burning IT teams or business operations. Now, you might have to schedule the outage on a time that's maybe not the most convenient, but you can do all the prep work for it, right, during the week. So that's a big difference. And then comprehensive planning and testing is important. I love to use the term approach. A good approach, if you know aviation, results in a good landing, right? So same thing here with all these solutions. Same with migration, same with encryption, same with compression. So we have other tricks up our sleeve that you maybe have done or need to be doing to manage your downtime. So let's talk about a few of those. Now, I already talked, hopefully you're following me on the encrypt while active approach, the compress while active approach. Well, take that same approach with upgrade while active. So what am I talking about? Well, let's say your manager comes to you and says, hey, we got to change a couple of field sizes on this database, right? This table. And you say, Mr. Manager, that database file is 2 terabytes in size. That's going to take a long time to convert. So we can use this same technique to allow that to be managed. So you can do an upgrade while active in the same way that I described the other 2 cases. So again, you have your production file servicing the business. You have the new file with the increased field or changed field structure, whatever it is. We copy from production to temp, 0 to 100%. We then go into idle mode. And when you're ready, schedule a short outage, move the production file into the archive, move the temp file into the production, and you're now running. And then don't forget to set up replication protection so you're always switch ready. Same concept. The next thing is hardware maintenance while active. Well, of course, you have this one's very familiar to many of you. People, this is where it all started, is what if my hardware dies on me? Well, I need hardware redundancy, right? So, but you can do hardware maintenance. You might need to do firmware upgrades on your power system. So you can move workloads off by doing a switch and then go ahead and do your hardware maintenance, whatever that may be. So that's just a regular switch over case. Take a very short outage, switch your users over to the backup system, run there. And you can switch and stay. Of course, we love it when people do that, switch and stay. Or you can just do it for a short time as well and then switch back to the main production system. Either way works. The big one I'm going to actually spend a little time on is OS upgrades while active. So let's get into that one. And so let's say you're on 7.3 and you decide you want to go to 7.5. So that's a 2 version jump. So I always talk to people, and this includes the migration or any of these, understand your variables, okay? And when you're doing major changes, try and limit your variables. We have done some pretty hairy projects where we're doing OS upgrades, hardware upgrades, data center upgrades. Of course, that means a network upgrade all at once. So there's a lot of variables there. You need to understand them. So an OS upgrade is one of those variables. So let's say you need to upgrade from 7.3 to 7.5. And so you can stay running on 7.3. You're running on production. Everything's going along fine. And You've tested out your 7.5, you know you're ready to go. So what you would do is you would upgrade the target system first. Okay, so that's, I don't know if you can see it, but number 1 on the slide there. Upgrade your target system. So you're still running on production 7.3. Your target system's now 7.5. Okay, so then make sure, maybe run there for a week. So restart replication, run your audits, and make sure everything is looking good for a week or more. And then now you schedule the switch over to the 7.5 system. So now you're running there, and you're going to be vigilant that everything's working okay. Remember those variables. You are making a 2-version OS jump from 7.3 to 7.5. You should be at the ready to switch back in case something is not working right. And I've seen this. Okay, it's not that common, but especially when you're pushing the upper levels of performance and IO processing, sometimes you run into things you didn't expect, and it's just not working. So you have to have a way to go back. So that's what this solution offers. You can run on 7.5, and if you find out it's not working for you, you can do a controlled switch back to 7.3. The Mimics replication will run from higher 7.5 to lower 7.3 for a temporary period of time, allowing you that go back option. Now, you do want to be careful before you don't go whole hog on 7.5 when you haven't upgraded your alternate system yet at 7.3, because using 7.5 functions, because they will not replicate back to 7.3. So you want to be on 7.5, but you want to act like you're still on 7.3 until you get all your systems upgraded. So that's the big difference. The thing that really sets Mimics apart and logical replication is the ability to go back to that older one. It is such a huge risk mitigation strategy. Okay, so I added the third node down on the lower right-hand corner. Some customers might say to you, well, gee, as soon as I change that 7.3 backup system to 7.5, guess what? I do not have proven DR anymore. I can never be without proven DR. So solve that problem by adding a third or a fourth node to the mix. And now you just leave the 2 systems at 7.3. You upgrade to 7.5. You run there. It's now proven. Everything's working. So now you upgrade just one of those systems. Now you have 2 systems that are proven. And then you can switch back or do whatever. And then finally just upgrade the third system. So that's another way to manage when they say, I can never be without a proven system. So that is the OS upgrade solution. And that brings us to the end of the talk today. And so I will turn it over to Jessica to see if there's any questions in the queue.
Thank you, Dan. Much appreciated. Looking in our queue, a few questions have been received. I'll start with, if I replicate my temp files, will that impact my production data groups? Should I put them in a separate data group?
Oh, I think the question is probably because they're concerned with all the you're copying every record in the file, and it might affect the data groups. I'm guessing that's the reason for the question. So I actually don't recommend you put it in a separate data group, because remember I talked about that move operation. If you keep it in the same data group, then the move operation will be smooth. It's all in namespace, right? And so it'll be a simple move. If you do it in a separate data group, then you lose that, and now you're doing cross data group, and you'd have to resync the file. So that's why I don't recommend that. If you're concerned about the copy active file activity, or the copy from prod to temp activity overwhelming your production, there's things that can be done to mitigate that. That's why we need to talk about an approach. So we could resync those via tape. We could send them over after the copy's done. There's a number of different things that can be done there. So that's where you could pull in our services and help you plan that approach.
Thank you, Dan. My save takes hours. Do I have to leave my data groups down the whole time?
Yeah, Lee, do you want to take that one?
I can take that one. No, you don't have to. A good solution for that would be, if that is a concern, would be to end the data groups, use a save while active to establish a checkpoint. As soon as that checkpoint is established, you can resume the activity. So you've got options there. You certainly can leave the applies down, do a full save. Replication is still happening to the target system to protect your data. But if you're concerned about the amount of time that the applies are down, working that with combining it with save while active is a wonderful solution.
Thank you, Lee. We received, can I use this to change the file size of my production tables?
I think that might be the upgrade while active use case. So that, yes, you can, within reason, right? You can change field definitions, DDL, I guess, of a table, and use this solution, right? So you could go in and do an alter table, but if you try an alter table on a huge file that's in production, first of all, you're not going to be able to do it because you need an exclusive lock. Second of all, it's going to take a long, long time. So yes, this is a great solution for that. You can manage that and copy from old to new. And we've worked with a lot of customers that have solved them. I have one in particular that Lee and I both worked on, and they did their analysis, and they said they were looking at, wait for it, 35 days of downtime. And we used these technologies we're talking about on this call, and we managed to do them all in a day.
Impressive. We just received an additional question. Why not just use the IBM reorg command?
Oh, the reorg command is fine, as I said, but it has limitations, right? And you need to understand what it's doing under the covers. If it works for you, use it. It's actually probably easier. The compress while active is there's some complexity there, and that's why I said that these land on our doorstep when people have no other option. So it's a solution, an approach for the most difficult files that are in production that have limitations.
Great, thank you, Dan. It looks like we haven't received any additional questions just yet. If you were to pop any in there, we'll get back to you post-webinar. And we thank you for your time today, and we look forward to speaking to you again in the very near future. Thank you, and goodbye.
All right. Well, that was a great presentation. Thanks to you, Dan and Lee, for putting together that information for us today. Lots of illumination for those of us who are using IBMs and mainframes in general. Some really excellent stuff that I think we can really learn from. So very much appreciate your time, your insights in the Q&A, and just thanks for being on today. So that is a wrap for us, folks. But before we let you go, we do have one more piece of business. You see it right up there, and it is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. We have a winner, too. As I mentioned at the beginning, you do have to be present for the entire event to be eligible to win the gift card. And the winner of today's $250 is Gary Bauman from California. Congratulations, Gary. We'll be in touch with you real soon to get you your card. So with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Precisely for making this event possible. Most of all, I want to thank all of you for attending. and for your attention and time, and for spending part of your day with us, for your great questions. It was truly a pleasure to be on with you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.